There has always been a discussion of why people like the Empire, and like all things on the internet, this has always led to a calm and rational debate on whether the bad guys at least had a reason for what they did. Plus, they had the best uniforms, and let's be honest, it's hard not to root for a group that has its own John Williams leitmotif. And anybody that didn't fall in love with that Star Destroyer flyover to open up A New Hope doesn't understand good media. But for a lot of nerds, it was the Imperial Sourcebook. This supplement is possibly the most influential of all the expansions for Star Wars. It fleshed out the bad guys. It explained their motives. It gave them a reason why they were there. It turned the mustache-twirling bad guys from the original trilogy into a comprehensive menace. It made the Empire scary. It made for one of the greatest RPG supplements of all time. Welcome to Echo Base. I'm Mr. Welch, and Commander, you may fire when ready. The Imperial Sourcebook hit in 1989, written by Greg Gordon, and was presented as an intelligence briefing for Mon Mothma, detailing the Empire's military structure, political breakdown, and a summary of their forces. Like all other West End game books, this one had to pass LucasArts muster, but since it did, all of this was official canon. Most of it still is. If you liked Andor, then thank this book. This was the Sourcebook that introduced Imperial intelligence. Those commandos that looked awesome before they got wiped out by K2SO. Page 28 under the IntSec entry. It explains so much of the lore, filling in details where they were needed. The juggernauts that made the Mandalorian episode so memorable, they first appeared on page 69. This book gave the Empire all the cool toys it needed, and they are still getting used. The book is 144 pages. There are 3 versions, the first edition hardcover, the follow-up softcover, and the second edition hardcover. The main differences between the editions are the updated rules, and they got the lore perfect, no reason to change anything except for the number of dice rolled. It has 12 chapters, each one expanding the lore or breaking down more Imperial craft, vehicles, and troop types. It's a mix of full-color photos from the movies, concept art, and a few images from deleted scenes, but it's mostly black and white art throughout. It does have a lot of creation specifically for this book. It actually has very little content in terms of ships or gear that appeared in the movie, since those were largely covered in the main rulebook. But like West End Game was fond of doing, it would still include them to take up space. Just not a lot of fluff, though. The book opens explaining the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Empire. And since this is well before the prequels, it's a bit vague, but fortunately doesn't have everybody on couches sitting around and talking to each other. There is no mention of the Clone Wars at all. It's inferred that that happened well before the rise of the Empire, and that the military units were arranged that way because of the events of it. This version of the Empire uses the Imperial Army far more than stormtroopers. There are no clone troopers here. Again, because the book predates the prequels. In short, the Republic is too large to manage, becomes corrupt, and the individual senators are in it for themselves. Palpatine arrives on the scene, he rises in power, and purges the Republic of the corrupt senators, and the Senate begins seceding its power to him because he was effective and they couldn't be bothered. Eventually they cede too much power, and now you've got Empire. It's a rather vague introduction, but then again they had to get permission from George, and he didn't want too much detail about the Clone Wars and Rise of the Empire getting out. So the Empire gets busy setting up the Imperial system, replacing planetary governors that don't see it his way, modernizing the military, and reorganizing the Republic's government to allow him to centralize power at the top. Most of the Moffs and governors were already handpicked by Palpatine, so the actual process of changing up the governmental structure went much smoother than you expected. The first thing once they did have the power was to take complete control of the HoloNet, the galaxy-wide communications network. Now it's restricted to just governmental and military uses, cutting off other planets from easily sharing news with each other. The next chapter covers COMPNOR, or the Committee for the Preservation of the New Order. The purpose of this organization is to look at all the other government entities and help them adjust their methods to be more in line with the Imperial way of thinking. Even the agencies already devoutly loyal to the Emperor, like intelligence. This makes them no friends, and they are easily the most despised Imperial bureau in the entire government, and that's just within the ranks of the Empire. The fact that they are notoriously inept at what they do doesn't help matters. COMPNOR agents work as efficiency experts, showing up unannounced and unwanted, telling people how to do their jobs, and then moving on after leaving a long list of instructions that are going to be ignored by the agency being scrutinized. The one thing that COMPNOR does have going for it is numbers, as they operate SAG Group, or the Sub-Adult Group. This is a social program that indoctrinates children into Imperial thinking, and it has trillions of members. The biggest issue for COMPNOR is that most of the agencies are redundant with other branches of the Empire. It's supposed to be a morale-boosting agency, but they lack real-world experiences, meaning all their slogans are often ignored or laughed at by the people who know how the world really works. When they take it upon themselves to duplicate other agencies' duties, especially intelligence, they're a pale imitation. Where Imperial intelligence can tap vid calls, bug office buildings, and bring people in for interrogation, COMPNOR's Coalition for Progress largely collects gossip. They do have a large military wing, COMPFORCE, and these are volunteers from SAG Group that have proven themselves loyal. Of course, this means that the Empire is utilizing child soldiers, but hey, everybody's got to do their part. This force is well armed, given priority for the best weapons and equipment, and despised by the regular army because of it. They were designed to be an alternative to the Stormtrooper Corps, who, while superior in terms of quality, lack the numbers COMPFORCE brings. These troops are somehow more devoted to the Imperial cause than the Stormtroopers, providing the quantity to the Stormtroopers' quality. They need the numbers because their attrition rate is ridiculous. These are teenagers given blasters by incompetent bureaucrats and told to go play soldier. Only 12% pass basic training. A quarter of the cadets die in the process. They're glorified cannon fodder, and worse, they're proud of it. A few survive to become veteran troopers, and these are respected, but they only make up a small percentage of COMPFORCE. The Imperial Security Bureau is the intelligence aspect of COMPNOR, looking at the government agencies for loyalty and compliance with COMPNOR policies. They are the least popular aspect of the government, more concerned with stamping out perceived treachery, corruption, and inefficiency in COMPNOR ranks, at least in the eyes of the ISB agents. They share quite a bit of overlap with Imperial intelligence, but not the authority. They can investigate suspects for any reason or none at all. ISB agents are known to be petty, vindictive, and arbitrary. One of their favorite tactics is to arrest someone on fabricated charges to see how his associates react, then apprehend anyone they feel is acting suspicious. ISB agents don't have a lot of friends. The intelligence branch of the Empire gets a lot of love, with a whopping 16 pages devoted to how the Empire likes to spy on people. Whoever wrote Andor probably has this entire chapter memorized. The governing board of the Intelligence Bureau is the Ubictorat, which handles coordination between all the branches of intelligence. The agency was formed from remnants of the Republic intelligence assets, which were used as personal spy agents for corrupt senators at the end. The former Republic spies jumped at the chance to serve someone they viewed as competent. They have a long and bitter hatred with COMPNOR, especially the ISB, as they tend to ramp up paranoia with their investigations, and often tip off rebels and other suspects before enough information is gathered. Anyone who shows talent in the spy field are drafted by Imperial intelligence, leaving the more incompetent but devoted individuals for ISB. The Ubictorat has logged countless protests about the redundancy between the two agencies to various Grand Moffs, with some success as sectors make sure that COMPNOR isn't giving any important tasks, just make busy work. The Internal Organization Bureau is the division of intelligence that deals with security threats to the agency. They're handpicked for their professionalism and are some of the more respected members of intelligence, as they prefer focused investigations rather than witch hunts. It's an entire government department filled with spies. They know how to avoid suspicion better than most. It takes a spy to catch a spy. For physical protection against threats, they have internal security, or INTSEC. This is considered an easy job, and a good number of the people in this division are used to their cushy positions. There are a few hardcore members that take their duties quite seriously, but they are the exception to the rule. Analysis are the data crunchers, the ones that sit behind desks and look at all the vast amounts of information brought in by the other branches. Media handles all forms of entertainment, looking for hidden messages in books, videos, and songs. They know that many entertainers sport rebel sympathies, so watch out for any signs of support. Signal branch tries to figure out how rebel messages are sent, such as scan docs, courier bots, or direct signal broadcasts. Then they try to shut down the means of the communications. It's a thankless task, but a necessary one. Cryptoanalysis is exactly what it sounds like, serving as the Imperial code breakers who try to decode any intercepted messages. Tech has the task of breaking down and reverse engineering captured enemy equipment. It's considered a glamorous job, and their budget reflects how popular they are. They do have a high success rate, which partially justifies their reputation. Interrogation is tasked to get as much information from the rebels as possible. They aren't as effective as their heavy-handed COMPNOR equivalents, but they don't resort to torturing their prisoners to death in the first meeting. They adopt their methods to try to trick the rebels, preferring to wear down their victims rather than resorting into outright torture. The Bureau of Operations, or just the Bureau, is the branch that handles all manners of covert operations and data analysis. This is the largest branch by far in intelligence, but handles the widest degree of tasks as well. Surveillance keeps an eye on foreign threats to the Empire rather than just spying on other agencies. They pride themselves on having 1/70th the manpower as the ISB, but they are still light years ahead in successful operations. Infiltration tries to work their way into enemy agencies, first practicing by secretly inserting themselves into Imperial agencies and seeing if anybody notices. Rennick is counterintelligence, trying to identify and dismantle rebel spy networks. Their name comes from its Republic origins, but nobody can remember exactly what it means. Diplosur are the diplomats, serving as messengers and trade delegations for Moths and other high-ranking leaders. Destabilization is the most secret of all the agencies. Their job is to bring down governments, politicians, and other threats behind the scenes. They will commit crimes, start riots, and run all sorts of false flag operations to get this done. Assassination is exactly what it sounds like. Imperial assassins are the rock stars of Imperial intelligence, and they are very good at their job. The intelligence branch sets the policies of the Empire's spy networks once they get the information from the Analysis Bureau. External communications handles emergencies when agents need to be informed of changes in orders. This is only in dire cases, as normal communications is handled by the Sector Plexus agency. Sedition observes government collapses or other uprisings, keeping track of what's going on and suggesting courses of actions to put it down. Crisis is a temporary assignment, created when other emergencies or events spring up that must be handled immediately. When the crisis is past, agents assigned to it are returned to their original positions. The agents originally claimed by the crisis are taken from other roles on a case-by-case basis, each specialized in a particular field relevant to the situation. Then there are the sector branches, which handle the day-to-day operations of Imperial intelligence, such as providing briefs for the moths and governors. This branch is a stepping stone for agents going into more specialized roles, but almost every agent will get their start in sector intelligence. The last aspects of intelligence are hyper-specialized. Sector Plexus handles most of the communications in the Empire and catalogs every message sent to make sure people are not abusing the network. This includes use of the HoloNet, messenger droids, and courier ships. CompuLink was derived from research into improving the HoloNet network. Instead, the scientists found a way to tap into local computer networks, and now it serves as a giant surveillance network that monitors local sectors for people using their computers to oppose the Empire. System cells are the basic unit of intelligence, and every inhabited and more than a few uninhabited worlds possess at least one. They operate independently of each other, monitoring local events or tracking starship movements. They're meant to be self-sufficient and having to scavenge for better weapons and equipment as necessary. While this is supposed to be from local governments or rebel groups, the cells will frequently raid COMPNOR locations for equipment. This is technically illegal. In reality, Imperial intelligence holds groups that do this in higher regard. Lastly, there is the Adjustment Bureau. These individuals are only called in when a situation has spiraled into chaos. An adjuster is sent to pacify the area. How they do it doesn't matter. Once the situation is handled, the adjuster leaves until needed again. Everyone in intelligence is terrified of this branch, and for good reason. The military section is split between the Army and Navy, as the Empire is of two different mindsets on the branches. Stormtroopers are mostly covered in their own section later on. In the Republic days, planetary governors could divert naval assets to protect them, or petition the Senate for military help for sustained actions. The Empire stripped the governors of this power, now leaving it up to the sector moths to decide if a problem is worth the Navy's time and resources. While this sucks for the governors, it was a welcome change for the Navy forces, as they were just being used as private security for planetary lords. The Navy was greatly expanded by the Empire, and the ranks were changed to provide more mid-level officers to handle the increased personnel. The Navy goes into three types of crew: the pilots, gunners, and the troopers, but doesn't talk about the officers or other branches like the technicians. You know, like the guys in the light gray uniforms that never get any love. The Imperial Army has been completely restructured since the time of the Republic. Before the Empire, each planet could request military garrisons to protect them, but they had to pay for them as well. This meant poorer planets had no protection, and the richer planets could field entire armies. Now the Empire decides where the army is needed most, so a poor but strategically important sector will have more troops than citizens, while a rich but secure system will have a small garrison at best. The sector breaks down the basic trooper and the assault trooper, which is vehicle crew by another name. Again, no mention of officers or how they factor into this. That is the one failing of this book. It goes into great detail on military structure, devoting chapters to it, but there's no mention of their stats, at least until the Death Star Technical Companion, which fortunately was the next book to come out after this one. There are a few paragraphs regarding the Stormtrooper Corps, but it's vague on purpose. They're handpicked for their abilities and their loyalties. They can't be persuaded, bribed, seduced, or blackmailed. They strike fear into normal troops and are only used when the regular army won't cut it. That's what it says on paper, but these guys are obviously the go-to mooks in the game. It details numerous types of stormtroopers, and you've got all the ones you see in the movies, plus the aquatic and zero-G stormtroopers, and those last guys are the nightmare fuel stat-wise. Next up is the capital ships section, and this introduces quite a few ships that don't appear until this book. The Skip Ray Blast Boat makes its debut in these pages, as does the System Patrol Craft and the Interdictor Cruiser. It also provides images to the ships introduced in the original book or the source book for a good chunk of them. It does have the famous size comparison chart featuring all the ships next to each other across 2 pages, except the Super Star Destroyer. That thing keeps going on for a total of 8 pages to give you a sense of scale. This section is mostly a technical guide of all the different ships, but not much in the way of lore. Chapter 6 are the custom ordnance weapons, because you can't be the Empire without super weapons, and only a few of these will blow up on you without serious repercussions. This is where you find the cloaking device, and yes, only larger vessels can generate the power to use them. They render a ship invisible on sensors, but have serious drawbacks as the technology isn't perfected yet. The cloaked ship has no sensors, it's flying line of sight. Hyperpulse mass generators are devastating energy mines you can place in hyperspace to destroy ships leaving or arriving in the area. Their problem is they only last for a few minutes, so you have to time laying them perfectly. Magnetic bombards are massive EMP blasts that can be delivered by beam weapons or by physical munitions. The first can be jammed and the second shot down. Two-wave grav shock devices create targeted earthquakes, requiring a specialized torpedo sphere to pull it off. The problem is it messes with the gravitational pull of a planet, making navigation near it difficult. Night cloaks and visual electromagnetic intensifiers are orbital weapons that either block out the sun or magnify it over a planet. These take time to set up and they are rather vulnerable to fighter attacks. The ground vehicle section covers a variety of wheeled and repulsor lift craft, and surprisingly does not cover the walkers that are featured prominently in most Imperial source books. They have pictures of them, but no entries. These vehicles are primarily new entries into Star Wars, including the first appearance of the Juggernauts, which I mistakenly called a Colossus last video. There's also scout speeders, command speeders, floating fortresses, and various light vehicles for all different uses in the Empire. Like the capital ships, this is a bunch of stat blocks to scare your players with. You have a rather large portion of the book devoted to the breakdown of Imperial forces in both the Army and Navy. This goes into great detail on how many troopers are in each level of unit, what the various ship formations look like, and how you get charts detailing the entire Imperial Army and Navy order of operations. And this section is for the people who love to sweat the details. Do you need to know how many men are in an engineering squad? Probably not, but the answer is 12. Heavy weapon platoons range from 180 to 198 troopers. There's also more battalion HQ units than there are battalions for the purpose of splitting units into smaller groups without a disruption in command. The Navy is also broken down by numbers of ships in each formation and includes all sorts of logistical information that is going to be of no use in 99% of all games. But for the people that love the background information, this is exactly what they want. They could have left this out and lost nothing, but I know people that can quote this section verbatim. 50 First cosplayers, you know who I'm talking about. You've got chapters about artillery and support weapons, and these are more stat blocks in case you want to shoot vehicles with fixed position weapons, though all the artillery are the laser cannons you saw on Hoth, and there's nothing that isn't line of sight. It does give information on squad heavy weapons, including warning you not to use the missile launcher and expect good results. These are mostly short lists of stats, but not much used in normal games of rebel agents sneaking around. There's a chapter on elite Imperial units, and this is almost all fluff. It talks about the Stormtrooper battalions, breaks down their deployment and how they're utilized. They're rarely deployed at full strength, instead deployed as companies or smaller units where needed. If you're running a more grounded Star Wars game, then most of the forces are supposed to be Imperial troops, saving the Stormtroopers for elite mooks. Oddly enough, the Stormtroopers have a worse stat line than the Troopers, as their armor docks them a point for dexterity rolls. Guess what skills the Stormtrooper has the most of? Their armor does provide a full die against energy weapons, raising their strength to resist blaster shots to 3 dice. Except the basic trooper already has a starting strength of 3d plus 1, with another plus 1 coming from their lighter armor. So the elite troops are worse than the regular grunts, as written. This section also covers the Hell's Hammers and Scimitar Assault Wing, which obviously doesn't mention any Scimitar attack craft, because those won't be introduced for years. The Hammers are an elite armored unit that has been around since the Republic and have been a bane of rebels everywhere. Because of the Empire overusing them in various theaters, they are chronically understrength and can only field a battalion now. The Assault Wing are a group of elite TIE fighters, serving primarily as a bomber wing. They are feared for close support roles and in demand across multiple sectors. The book goes into great detail on who the Empire targets for recruitment, specifically which worlds they concentrate on, which ones they refuse to recruit from, and the kind of people they are looking for. They don't recruit from worlds that have been the subject of Imperial hostilities, as well as worlds known for rebel leanings. Most recruits come from core or colony worlds, and the closer you are to Coruscant, the better your chances of being made an officer. Everyone is screened for fitness, bravery, intelligence, and loyalty, and how you test depends on where you are assigned. The Navy does its own recruiting and has a sector academy to train new Navy crew. The ones that test in the top 2% are sent to the Imperial Naval Academy, and if the MOF approves, where they are fast-tracked for promotion after 30 months of training. The Imperial Sourcebook is not a perfect book by any means, but it does come close. It covers aspects of the Imperial military, but not the actual government itself. There's no indications of what life is like on the Imperial worlds, and the sections on military organizations are eye-bleedingly dry. It does save most of the information on officers and specialized forces for later books, but their absence is notable here. Having said that, this book is a must for Star Wars fans. It provides lore on many things that are standard knowledge now, but this book introduced them. I found at least 12 entries that had the line, First Appearance Imperial Sourcebook over on Wikipedia. You can get the book for somewhere between $25 and $50 online, and the second edition book is a better option because it gives equipment loadouts for all the characters. It's a must-have for anybody wanting to play Star Wars D6. And if you're a Star Wars fanatic, you probably already have this book on your shelf. Next, Echo Base, I'm looking at the Rebel Sourcebook, which, while informative, didn't have the same effect on the fandom that the Imperial Sourcebook did, which means I can research it much faster. Until then, tear this ship apart until you have found those plans.